Hey folks, this is Ham the Guinness Gamer here again, bringing you my next video on PAX Day. Today's video is going to be about armoursmithing, and both how it is now and both pre and post the Proving Grounds update, and then how I believe it can be improved. Before I get into that though, if you like this video, give me a like and a subscribe, any comments to make, blah blah blah, leave them down below, you know the drill. But for now, let's go straight into it. Armoursmithing is very similar to weaponsmithing, in that, which I've done a separate video on, in that there's a very obvious way to level it. There's some pieces that are just much more efficient to level up. That is still particularly noticeable. It's been noticed before the Proving Grounds update. It was noticeable at all levels. It's still particularly noticeable at the lower levels. If you look at some of these, basically the items that you want to make are all of these, can't spell coif here, brilliant, are all of these chainmail pieces, because they're by far the cheapest when you're talking about mats. They use wire of different types of metal depending on what level you are, but here the very first one that you'll make are these primitive chainmail coif ones, and they're just 5 iron wire. When you go to the blacksmithing forward here, you'll see that that wire is super cheap. Oh dear, very difficult to actually type here while trying to concentrate on what you're speaking about. So if you look here, iron wire is very cheap. 1 ingot makes you 10, so essentially 1 ingot is actually making 2 of those coifs at the very low level. When you get up to wrought iron wire here, it's 1 ingot per 5, but still it works out very cheap compared to a lot of the other items that you can make. So essentially you focus on making those chainmail pieces the whole way up. You go right through from the ones at level 8 there, the first one I showed, right through, and the ones I'm making at the minute now are level 29, level 30. These are still the cheapest pieces to make. Now what they've done in the Proving Grounds update is, they've been upfront about all this in their Discord announcements, is that they've altered the XP gains and such. So they've made it a little bit more complicated for working out what exactly is the most efficient piece to make, which I like. It shouldn't be really obvious. So before the update, I was just making loads and loads of these gloves. That's how I mostly leveled up. And the reason why you pick the gloves is it takes 3 iron wire, 2 leather bands, 1 linen cloth to make them. Whereas if you look at the coif of the same level, it's actually 5 wire, 2 bands and 2 cloth. The pants are 9 wire, 4 bands, 2 cloth. The hauberk 14 wire, 4 bands and 4 cloth. Before the Proving Grounds update, all those items give you exactly the same amount of XP. So you're always going to make the gloves, and you're going to make thousands of the gloves, because that's the quickest way to level up. Now they've changed it slightly in that your XP is related both to the difficulty of the craft as well as the amount of mats that you use. So if I make here, you've got the same problem with these slightly higher level pieces of armour. You have gloves here that are 3 wrought iron wire, 2 bands and 1 cloth, which I'll craft here. That's going to give us 2900 XP, which isn't bad. 2900. And then we're going to make the shoes, which use slightly more wire but same bands, same cloth. That's 3100, so it gives you slightly more. And then if we make we'll skip that for a second, and finally we make the coif then, which uses an extra cloth and another extra wire on top of the shoes, and it's going to give us 3800. So they've adjusted it depending on the mats, which makes complete sense. Now what I'm going to make here also is these munition plate gauntlets, and the reason why I'm throwing them into the mix is just to show these are much more complicated. They take a lot more materials, and some of these are a lot more harder to come by than just wire and some basic bands, basic cloth, but yet they're a similar level. They're actually the exact same level as the coif there to make. Now what this is going to do is give us a decent chunk more XP. 5,000 compared to, what was that, nearly 4 for the coif, or 3.8 for the coif. The issue is, I don't think it's worth it. It's good that they're adjusting these things, and they'll continue to adjust on them, I'm sure, but the munition plate gauntlets there they use way more mats than these chainmail pieces, like far more. Now they are more useful, so you probably end up making a couple of these and you'll actually wear the munition plate gauntlets, whereas I don't actually wear any of the chainmail. It's just not good enough compared to the other items, so ultimately you make loads of it just to throw it in a box or throw it away. Now that presumably will change at some point in the future when they bring in reasons to wear light armor, medium armor, but for now it's all about wearing the heavy armor, the proper plate stuff. So therefore at the minute you're just making loads and loads of these chainmail pieces, never to be actually worn. As I say, it's good that they've changed that XP slightly, but it's still very obvious that you're not going to make these munition plate gauntlets to level up. You're going to be making the chainmail stuff. Now which actual chainmail piece you make here, but as I said before, it was very obvious, just always do the cheapest one because you're getting the exact same XP. Now because of the XP, you probably will make a choice out of these other pieces depending on what your limit in mats is. Just looking at those figures, if you have loads and loads of linen cloth, you should always have loads and loads of iron wire. If you have loads of linen cloth, you probably end up making the coifs, whereas if you don't, if your limit is flax, which really shouldn't be because it's everywhere, but your limit is cloth, then you're probably going to make the gloves or the shoes. Probably do some calculations to try and work out exactly what the difference is in XP by making like 10 of each and find an average, and then work out whether it's worth, you know, making the shoes over the gloves for that extra wire. I'm not going to go into that kind of detail because, well, wrought iron wire, we have a lot of it, so there's no big issue there. But what I will say definitely is the chainmail's still the most efficient even after the Proving Grounds update, because the mats needed for these gauntlets, the boiled generic leather, probably the worst, and then the wrought iron sheets as well. The sheets take a lot of wrought iron to actually make, whereas the wire takes very little wrought iron to make, so ultimately that would need change significantly before the likes of these plate stuff was ever the most efficient to make to actually level up. But as I say, they're the best pieces, they're the better defensive stats on them than any of the chainmail pieces, so you will always make a few of them just to level up, or just for armor purposes, for wearing purposes. What I like about Armoursmithing is there's a bit of cross-reliance in it on other professions. You know, you see there that you need the leather bands and the generic leather, you know, that comes from your leatherworking. Obviously you need the studs and the buckles in this case come from blacksmithing. You need the cloth then from tailoring as well for a lot of it. That's good. I think that's something that devs should lean into and have more cross-reliance on their professions, because it makes it much more fun, much more engaging, and in the final release of the game where you're not presumably not doing every profession like I am at the minute, it means that you obviously have to rely on your other clan members or trading with other players if you're solo just to get the items that you need, and encouraging that kind of thing will be brilliant for the game. However, problem with Armoursmithing is the same as what it is with weaponsmithing, in that it's just rinse and repeat of recipes. You're making far too many items. You know, I don't know how many pairs of gloves I made before the update, because they were the most efficient, so all I had was, you know, 10 pairs of the other things for people to wear, and then about 1,000 pairs of gloves, you know, and lots of them then end up being thrown on the ground. So how would I improve it then? A couple of different things, again similar to the weaponsmithing, in that the first thing that I would change, and it would be a fairly big change, would make each individual item that you're crafting require more effort. So instead of having to make 10 pairs of gloves, make one pair of gloves with 10 different processes. And you could go as granular as you want, really. You could be folding the metal sheets, or linking the chainmail, or, you know, attaching the leather to the seams of whatever item that you're making, you know, attaching the cloth to the seams. You could make different pieces of an actual item. So if you're talking about the likes of a breastplate, you could maybe make the front of the breastplate, you can make the back of the breastplate, you could have hinges or whatever to connect them. You know, there's, depending on the item there's a number of different things you could do, and you could end up having 10 or 12 different processes for a breastplate, say, but only 6 or 7 different processes for the gloves or the shoes because they're smaller. But still, you know, make each item take a decent bit more effort to make. So instead of having to make, as I say, 1,000 gloves, you only make 100 pairs of gloves with, you know, whatever, 10 different processes. That's one thing that will really address the feeling of wasted kind of effort and wasted mats, because all you're doing, yes, you're leveling up, but that's all you're doing. You're not making anything that's useful beyond the first 5 or 10 or whatever your clan size is, whatever they're using. And even then, you know, the useful stuff, you're making the more expensive stuff that's useful. It's all this just making chainmail stuff to level up. That's all basically a lot of time, it's a lot of materials, just to level up. You know, it's not enough. You need more use basically for the things that you're creating, and you're never going to have a use for 500 pairs of chainmail gloves. As I said with the weaponsmithing before, by the time you've actually made those 500 pairs, you've actually then leveled up and you can make the next level of gloves. So from gloves 1 here at level 22, and then all of a sudden you can make gloves 5. I don't know why it goes from 1 to 5, but you can make gloves 5 then only a couple of levels above that. So once you've made all your hundreds and hundreds, they immediately become obsolete because you can make slightly better ones for the exact same mats, should I add, which also is a bit silly. Now I like that the higher ones here do have like cloth and bands required. You know, the earlier ones do not. You know, they're just wire, and therefore they're really, really easy to make. That would be my first fix. Also, if they bring in those, talking to somebody in my YouTube comments there the other day, and they could bring in salvaging materials as well, which will help a bit, you know, so at least you can salvage excuse me, at least you can salvage your 500 gloves and maybe get a percentage of the mats back. That will help in a way, but I don't think it's not the big fix. It's not the permanent fix. It'll just make it feel a little less unrewarding, but you want to strive for more than that. I think you want it to be fun, you want it to be rewarding, you want it to be worthwhile, and all the while then you're also kind of leveling up your skill in the background. I don't have a problem with the amount of items. Let me rephrase that. I don't have a problem with the amount of processes you have to do to level up. You know, it's a fairly grindy game. It's difficult to get up to the very high levels of professions because you need to do a lot. That's fine. I just want, you know, if it takes you 1,000 processes to get up from level 28 to 29, I want those 1,000 processes to be not producing 1,000 pairs of gloves, because it's just a wee bit outrageous. Second thing then that you change, I'm sure this is coming eventually anyway, is just the armor sets. You know, have a different, you know, this is tied very, very closely into the combat system, but you need to have reasons, very clear reasons for why you would wear heavy, light and medium armor. You know, it has, presumably, judging from other games, you know, it'll be related to speed. You know, you wear your heavy armor because you're tanking, and obviously you have your biggest armor stats from that, but you have to then be slower than the guys in light and medium armor. Once you do that, then all of a sudden these chainmail pieces have a use, because presumably they're going to be some kind of medium armor, maybe. You know, there's a couple of different gear slots for different pieces, but if you look at my equipment here, you can wear, you know, your chainmail hauberk as well as your breastplate, which is good, you know, so the chainmail hauberk has a use, but everything else doesn't really. You know, chainmail pants as well, because you can wear them underneath your plate leggings. But all the, you know, there's only one slot for gloves, so you're going to wear the armor gauntlets there instead of the chainmail gloves, and you're going to wear the proper armor shoes instead of the chainmail shoes. So some of them have a use, i.e. the trousers and the hauberk, but the rest is completely useless as it is at the minute. I actually noticed there I'm not wearing any pauldrons. Need to make some of those. So yeah, ultimately then they need to find a use for why you would ever wear the likes of the chainmail gloves, and presumably then they have to be some kind of medium armor, even though they're metal. Don't know how that's going to work, because then where does the leather come in? the cloth, you know, because you can make cloth pieces for basically every part of your body, and then you can make leather pieces for every part of your body. Right now they're all useless without the differentiation between heavy, light and medium armor. So I don't know how they'll bring in the chainmail gloves. Maybe they'll increase your gear slots so that you can wear them under the plate. I don't know, we'll see. But it is something I believe that they are planning to do, so it'll be interesting to see how they apply that, because there is a lot of overlap. Then when you're looking at these things, there's a lot of overlap between the combat system and the crafting system, particularly when you're talking about armor and weapons. Third thing then, the final thing that I would change to make it better is I would do more of what they've done regarding the XP. I think you need to have a greater differentiation here when you look at the likes of these gloves and the gauntlets. They're a good comparison because they're the same part of the body. You know, the gauntlets are a lot better armor wise and therefore they take more mats. That makes complete sense. More difficult to make, but it needs to give you even more XP. The difference isn't enough to lean into making, you know, to using your boiled generic leather to make these for whatever it was, 5,000 or so. Yeah, 5,000 compared to the gloves then that are only 1,000 or 2,000 less XP, but the mats are way less, so you're never going to be making these gauntlets. In fact, I've probably just wasted resources making a couple for the purpose of this video. You're never going to be making them to level up, you're just going to be making them to wear, which you're always going to be making the chainmail. It shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be so obvious to go down one particular crafting line, you know, making all the chainmail stuff and basically ignoring everything else. There should at least be a bit of calculation needed to work out what's more efficient. You know, it just shouldn't be, oh, look at that uses very little mats. So what you would do then is to fix it, give more XP for the likes of these pieces, like lean into what they've already done, like way more because of the mats that's needed, and have some kind of in the background value assigned to the likes of boiled generic leather here that's not as common as, nowhere near as common as some of the stuff here in the chainmail gloves. But even the likes of the wrought iron sheet, as I said earlier, uses way more wrought iron than the wrought iron wire does. So like this is way more costly to make. So I would think if the chainmail gloves are going to be about 3,000 XP, this thing needs to be giving you 10,000. And then you're looking at it going, oh, I could make a good few of those. That would be fairly good bang for the buck regarding the XP. But at 5,000, it's just not enough. I think I'll leave that there though. That's all my thoughts on Armoursmithing at the minute. I'll do more Packs Day content in the future, but for now, thank you for watching. As I say, if you like this video, give me a subscribe and a like. I'll be putting out plenty more Packs Day content, but for now, wherever you are, goodbye and good luck.